start with a new topic today, and the topic is Section 144 of CRPC. Much used provision these days, because you would have found out that initially your lockdown orders were issued as orders under 144. Yes, if you had seen any notification. So this section is of primary concern because it comes in very handy for the administration, that if they want to prohibit anything, they can easily exercise their power under section 144. On the other hand, many times in the free India, questions have arisen over the very validity of 144. They say, the people who have challenged these orders, they say that this is an arbitrary exercise of power, giving much wider scope to the executive to interfere with our fundamental rights, maybe right to go out, right to movement, right to speech. In fact, you would be surprised to know that till 2017, all the orders which suspended even internet were being passed under section 144 of CRPC. So many times this section has been in point of conflict. Recently, you must have seen that when students were protesting, the area of protest site was declared as under 144. So they could not have even exercise their democratic right of dissent. The question then goes, how does democracy, dissent, and 144 go hand in hand with each other? To answer all these questions, we have to first understand what is this section 144, why this section has been included in CRPC, thirdly, whether it is constitutionally valid or not, fourthly, if it is constitutionally valid, then how it can be exercised. With these questions, let me with section 144. Let me present my screen now. Just one second. Very interesting cases on this and a very interesting topic. Please understand that section 144 has been put in a particular chapter in your CRPC, that is chapter 10, which deals with maintenance of public order and tranquility. Please understand, as I have been repeating in previous classes, that CRPC is not just providing us a mechanism for finding out guilt, to determine guilt. It also has certain preventive measures so as to contain crime. So crime control is also one of the purposes of CRPC. What I'm trying to say here is, I'm trying to revive your lecture 1, which was taken by VC sir, when he talked about two models, crime control model and due process model. So this crime control model is something which has all these powers by which there can be preventive action taken by executive authorities so that crime does not happen. And one of those chapters is chapter 10, which has various powers, like the power to not allow unlawful assemblies. If they occur, to disperse unlawful assembly. Then secondly, the power is with respect to public nuisances. Section 133 onwards, that if there is a public nuisance, then conditional orders can be made, a preliminary inquiry can be done, and then orders can be made. In fact, even injunctions can be issued under CRPC under section 143. Then we have urgent cases of nuisance and danger, which we will discuss as 144. Then there are fourth class of cases which deal with disputes as to immovable property. But yes, a dispute between an immovable property can also become a law and order situation. For instance, let's say a dispute between the property, basically a civil dispute, but let's say people are trying to give it a communal color, that a Muslim has taken the land of a Hindu, and therefore the community sentiments are flared up. Therefore, in certain cases, even with respect to civil disputes, power have been given to district magistrates, executive magistrates for that matter, to interfere in those situations under criminal law so as to prevent peace in the society. Sorry, so as to have peace in the society, so as to prevail peace in society and prevent disturbances thereof. One of the important limbs of all these four powers that I have discussed in your syllabus, I have picked up only one, that is section 144. This is part C of this chapter 10, which talks about urgent cases of nuisance and apprehended danger. The first question that should arise in your mind is that whether this section is required or not required under criminal law. The answer to this is, if you go by the crime control model, there are people who justify existence. There are academicians, scholars, and judges who justify existence of section 144. They feel that a criminal law will be unable to achieve its purposes if the authorities are not given the power to prevent the commission of crime. However, this power has to be balanced. The power to prevent crime has to be balanced and has to be exercised only in immediate cases. Therefore, the power under 144 is only in urgent cases of nuisance or where there is a danger to human life or safety or property. So, exceptional power. This is not a power which is ordinarily available. There have to be exceptional circumstances which have to be justified first before this power can be exercised. Then, question comes, who can issue orders? The orders are issued here by executive authorities. So there are limited ways where executive authorities can also issue these orders. It is an executive order, it is not a judicial order. So the first person who is authorized to issue order under section 144 is the district magistrate. If not him, then your subdivisional magistrates, or there can even be executive magistrates who are specially empowered by the state. Then comes the question, when can they issue the order under 144 and what is going to be the nature of this order? This order can be issued under 5 situations which are enumerated. To prevent, there is a likelihood of such event and therefore you have to prevent. So preventive action could be taken. Of what? Obstruction, annoyance, or injury to any person lawfully employed, danger to human life, health, and safety, disturbance of public tranquility, riot, or affray. What is the difference between riot and affray? If you have read your IPC, you will find out riot has unlawful assembly, 5 or more persons. Affray is between 2 persons. So it can either be a riot or it can be a affray. Please refer to your IPC for that matter. And in riot, there are weapons, whereas in affray, it can even be with muscle power. Then the question arises that there has to be a likelihood of these danger. But how will the magistrate find out? Because the section uses the word if in the opinion of the magistrate there is a danger or a likelihood of danger, then he can issue an order under section 144. Supreme Court in 2 landmark cases. One in Babulal Parte's case, which was the first case relating to constitutional validity of section 144 in independent India. And the second case is Anuradha Basheen's case, which has recently come in the Kashmir issue, has stressed on a prior inquiry before issuing order. In Babulal Parte's case, Supreme Court in 1961 said there is no mention of inquiry as such in 144, but then you cannot read a section by word. You have to read the entire section as a whole. And if you read the entire section as a whole, you will find out that the magistrate has 2 duties here. One, he has to form an opinion And secondly, he has to state material facts. Now, how can he form an opinion if he has not conducted an inquiry or if there is no material before him? Not possible. Secondly, he has to write out the reasons why he is issuing an order under 144, which will not be possible if he has not applied his mind to the facts of the case. Therefore, it is required that the magistrate proceeds by an inquiry. He must have some inquiry, he must have some material on the basis of which he issues order under 144. And if he does that, that can tackle the criticism which is leveled against section 144, that it is arbitrary in nature. This exercise of conducting an inquiry will check against the arbitrary power of the magistrate. Also, this point has been stressed time and again, and recently in Radha Bashin's case, wherein it was held that the word opinion, which is used in the first clause of section 144, shows that there has to be careful exercise, application of mind, and a prior inquiry by a magistrate. Am I clear on that? So there has to be a prior inquiry, even though it is not mentioned under 144, because of the word opinion used under section clause 1 of this particular section. So please highlight the word opinion, and this is how it has been interpreted by the Supreme Court. So let's say if now inquiry has been done by the magistrate and he comes to a prima facie opinion. See, he does not have to take evidence. If he comes to a prima facie opinion, then the opinion that there is a danger to a particular servant who is lawfully employed, or there is obstruction, or there is a danger to human health, life, or safety, or that there is going to be a riot and affray, then he can issue an order under 144. What is the order? Orders under 144 can be of two types. They can be prohibitory orders or they can be mandatory orders. A prohibitory order is the one which prohibits people from doing a particular act. So let's say if he feels that there is going to be an outbreak of a riot, he can prohibit unlawful assembly. Right? Unlawful riot कब होगा? जब unlawful assembly होगा. Unlawful assembly कब होगा? जब 5 या 5 से ज्यादा लोग होंगे. So he can say that not more than 4 people will collect here. Right? So that's why we say it is a curfew order, prohibiting. कर्फ्यू वर्ड यूज नहीं है, लेकिन हम रीड करते हैं 144 में कि कर्फ्यू लगा दिया है. पीपल आर फॉरबिडन फ्रॉम कमिंग आउट ऑफ देयर होम्स. राइट? So 144 can do that. Prohibit people from doing a particular act. Prohibit people from opening their shops. Can happen under 144. Talk about any prohibition, but that prohibition must be expressly mentioned in the order. Or it can be a mandatory order requiring that they take certain steps with respect to their properties or with something in their possession. Mandatory. So someone has not installed a particular thing in the building, then it is mandatory that all people in that area or a particular person to whom it is to have a, let's say, effluent treatment plant can be done under 144, or to take steps to make it fire worthy can be done under 144. So orders can both be prohibitory as well as mandatory. However, what you have to remember here is that this prohibition or mandate is of a temporary nature. It cannot be of a permanent nature. Then comes the procedure. That what is the procedure for issuing the order under 144? The procedure is that the order under 144 must be a written order. It cannot be an oral order. Prime Minister cannot come on a TV and announce. There has to be an order. A civil servant cannot come on a TV. A secretary cannot come on a TV and say without issuing a written order. A written order is mandatory. Obviously, once a written order is made, it must be communicated, and it must be communicated either by delivery of that order or by other means of promulgation. You can have TV for the promulgation of an order, but you cannot have a TV without a written order, a televised videocast without a written order. Now, this is important, that there must be promulgation in the manner which is provided under section 134. Most importantly, this order, because of emergency of the situation which is conceived, can even be an ex parte order. If there is time, then you can show cause and then give a reasoned order. However, power is given to issue ex parte orders. Generally, the orders under section 144 are ex parte. And another important point with respect to procedure is that when this order is issued, there must be certain facts why this order is issued. There must be material facts why this emergency is conceived of the magistrate. Reason is, though the order is the ex parte order, however, it does not mean that this order can never be challenged. There is a power which is given under further clauses, basically clause 5 and clause 6 and clause 7, that the order under 144 can be challenged. How it can be challenged? Because it is an executive order, so representation can be made by the affected person before the authority issuing the order, but then he has to make out the case. If he does not know why 144 order was issued, he cannot make an effective representation. So his right to make an effective representation against 144 is impacted. Therefore, material facts have to be stated. Am I clear? On this particular point, there is this leading case law of Anuradha Bhasin, which is your J&K Kashmir issue case. As you know, on August 3rd, after there was a constitutional amendment and the special position of J&K was abrogated, it was felt that there will be law and order situation, there will be terrorist activities in Jammu and Kashmir, due to which certain actions were taken by the central government. The the state was already under the rule of the governor. Therefore, central government issued orders immediately. What were the orders here? The orders were suspension of internet, mobile, landline connectivity. Total communication snapdown was ordered. There were many people who were put under preventive arrest, including your leaders of the political parties. And then freedom of press was also curtailed. They could not send out the editions of their newspapers. In fact, what we are experiencing now, though our mobiles have not been shut down, thankfully, the valley was under a lockdown situation. Lockdown is not a legal word, but the effect is cumulatively called as lockdown. Now, in this case, surprisingly, there was an address which was made on television by the Prime Minister. There were speeches made by the Home Minister. Unfortunately, apart from the Constitutional Amendment Act, which was signed by the President, there was no order declaring lockdown. It was said that there have been orders issued by magistrates by which curfew has been imposed. But those orders, the copy of those orders was not notified. They were not published orders as is required. Now, these were challenged along with freedom of press, notification of these orders, non-notification of these orders, by which fundamental freedom of people under Article 19 was taken away, was challenged before the Supreme Court in the case of Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India. Also, this case, another respondent here is Ghulam Nabi Azad. So they challenged these orders. Supreme Court in this case delivered in judgment. This judgment is delivered on 10th January this year. depreciated the practice of the central government and said, we cannot agree with the way in which things have been done post this constitutional amendment. I have picked up only 2 points from this judgment. The first one is non-production of orders by the state. Supreme Court said that non-production of the orders by state is illegal. There is a mandatory duty on the state to produce orders. Even before the Supreme Court, they did not produce the orders and they said that we will produce some sample orders. That practice was depreciated by a Supreme Court on 2 counts. One on Article 19, in which freedom of speech and expression has been interpreted as to include right to information. So people have a right to know in a democracy under Article 19. And if they do not know about the orders, then it violates their freedom of speech and expression. Secondly, if you have read Lon Fuller's Inner Monarity of Law, he says one of the conditions of law is that law must be published. People on whom this law is made applicable, they should know about it. So this is a principle of natural law, he says. This elucidation of natural law by Lon Fuller has been given a judicial stamp in this case, and Supreme Court said that non-publication of orders is a violation of natural law. No law can be passed by the state in the clandestine manner, at least not in a democracy. So it is violative of Article 19. And if the state, let's say it is claiming state privilege, it is claiming security of the state, that is something which the court will decide. State cannot claim privilege and even refuse to partake that information with the court. If the court feels that privilege is justified, then it will redact those orders. It will not publish those orders, but at least the court should be made aware of. So whether there is state privilege or not is also judicially reviewable. Therefore, orders should at least be produced before the court, which was not done in this case. Therefore, the mechanism in which lockdown was implemented in the valley was held to be not in consonance with the law. Second thing was that there were orders passed under 144 and they were with respect to public in general. Secondly, though the orders were passed, one, that they were not published and they did not state the reasons why they were done. Supreme Court again in this case said this was wrong on the part of the state to have issued orders under 144 in the manner. Power under 144 cannot be exercised in a casual and cavalier manner because representation can be made against an order under 144 if the reasons are not stated why order is issued. Then this takes away the right of the aggrieved party. Therefore, in this case, the state was ordered that if you are continuing with orders, please comply them with the guidelines that we are elucidating. Also in this case, another very important principle which has from 2016 been crux of all the cases, that is the principle of reasonability and proportionality stressed. In this case, it was stressed that even the orders under 144 should satisfy the test of proportionality. Now, what is proportionality? That has been given in a previous case of Modern Dental College, in which proportionality has been said that you should try to strike a balance between the means and the ends. First, there must be a reason why this power has to be exercised. Come to a justification that this is required. And therefore, if the end is justifying, then the means that you're choosing, that should be the one which is least intrusive in your fundamental rights. So principle of proportionality and the least intrusive manner has to be used. Also, it was stressed in this case that power under 144 cannot be exercised to suppress legitimate opinion of the people, to curb their democratic right to dissent or to express grievance. There has to be an emergency to highlight the exercise of power under 144. Without there being an emergency, there cannot be a power under 144. Colorable exercise of power under 144 will not stand judicial scrutiny. And lastly, repetitive orders should not be passed. If there are repetitive orders, then this is violating the spirit of 144, because emergency बार बार नहीं हो सकता है. There have to be a situation. Then comes the question, to whom are the orders issued? In this case, one of the contentions which was taken was that orders cannot be general in nature, to public generally. But this contention of the petitioners was rejected, and it was said, you look at the very language of section 144, it is provided here that the under clause 3, that the order can be directed to a particular individual if possible, or to few people living in a particular area, so it can have a geographical extent, or it can be with respect to people generally. Not necessary. So depending upon what is the emergency, it can be to few, it can be to many, or it can be a general order. Another important question is that if the orders are emergency orders, then there has to be a time limit, because I've already stressed that these orders cannot be repetitive in nature. Question comes, what is the duration of the orders? The duration of the order can be specified in the order itself, and even if the order it is specified, it cannot exceed 2 months. The order cannot exceed 2 months. It can be limited 2 दिन के लिए, it can be 5 दिन के लिए, but the outer limit is 2 months. And even though the limit is mentioned in the order, it can be changed, it can be altered, or the order itself can be rescinded by the magistrate on its own application, or by an application of the aggrieved person. However, power is given to the state government, not to the magistrate, to extend the order under section 144 by 6 months. So outer limit is 2 plus 6 months. But again, this order can be revoked by the state before the expiry of those 6 months. Am I clear? This is in brief 144. Now, questions have arisen on implementation of 144, constitutional validity of 144, which we will discuss. See, 144 is only talking about a procedure by which a mandatory or a prohibitory order can be issued. Now, the question arises, what if a person violates the order? Is it that an offense? And if it is an offense, what is the mechanism to try the accused, people who have violated these orders? The answer is, we have to read section 188 and 195 CRPC. There is a section under IPC, that is section 188, which makes it an offense to disobey an order promulgated by public servant. So since order under section 144 is issued by public servant, it is said that for a violation of 144 CRPC, the remedy is 188 IPC. However, please see that 188 IPC is cognizable and bailable. It means that if an offense is cognizable, FIR can be registered in a cognizable case, and arrest can also be made by the police without warrant. This is the definition of cognizable. So yes, there is a power to register FIR as well as to arrest people who are violating orders under 144. But then there is another important section, that is section 195, wherein it has been stated that if it is, when the court has to take cognizance there has to be a complaint in the writing. Now, there are two conflicting things. 188 is cognizable, meaning thereby there can be an FIR. 195 says cognizance cannot be taken unless there is a complaint. So there is a conflict between two. 188 says if I go by 188 IPC, there can be a FIR and then there can be a police report. But as per 195, there only has to be a complaint case. Now, question is, how do we reconcile both of them? The answer is that there is a judicial vacuum here. There is no clear-cut decision. Because on one hand, if I go by IPC, it stresses on FIR, and if I go by CRPC, it stresses on the power to have a complaint. Now, this question have arisen before Supreme Court, but in different context. Supreme Court in the case of C. Muniappan versus State of Tamil Nadu in 2010 said that for violation of 188 IPC, there cannot be an FIR. There cannot be charges on the basis of a police report. There has to be a complaint case. And in this case, Supreme Court quashed the conviction on 188 IPC because there was an FIR and not a complaint. Now, this was a case where in state of Tamil Nadu, there was riots. Order under 144 were imposed. But accused person, they set the bus despite these prohibitory orders on fire, due to which 3 girls lost their life and they were given death sentence. Now, one of the reasons for challenging their conviction, they had challenged their conviction before the Supreme Court, was that order cannot be issued under 188 IPC cannot be taken cognizance of by the court on the basis of a police report. There has to be a complaint. Supreme Court said yes, cognizance could not have been taken by the magistrate, and non-compliance would vitiate the prosecution. However, here only limited relief was given. Only 188 was wiped off, not the other crimes. But then in another case of 1997, Supreme Court itself said, what are the words used under 195? It is only cognizance which is barred. Investigation is not barred. FIR is not barred. So nevertheless, there can be FIR. However, if after filing FIR, the court cannot take cognizance on the basis of the police report, a question arises, what will the court do with that FIR? This will be like a Damocles sword always hanging on the head of the accused person, for which it is very difficult to answer, because again, I'm saying there is no clear-cut decision of Supreme Court on this point. How do we reconcile 195 CRPC with 188 IPC and 144? Whether if there is a use of section 210 of CRPC, that if there is a complaint case and a police case, parallel provisions have been found under special laws where it is said expressly police officer is given the power to make a complaint. So what I feel is that like the police officer is exercising its power under special statutes like your Mining Act or Food Adulteration Act, where police officer itself can be the complainant. So when it can do an FIR, it can investigate, and where it comes to the opinion that order under 144 has been violated, instead of the magistrate, let the police officer become the complainant, and instead of filing the police report, it can file the complaint before the court, and then cognizance can be taken. That is one way out. However, now there is no final decision of the Supreme Court on how to reconcile these conflicting opinions, and the matter is pending in the Supreme Court in a public interest litigation which has been filed by Professor Dr. Vikram Singh, wherein he had said he had asked for quashing all the FIRs which have been filed for violating lockdown orders, on this contention that there is a bar created by 195 and therefore there could not have been FIR. Clear on that? But we have to wait the decision. How does Supreme Court reconcile? Yes.
Ma'am, I had a question.
Yes, please.
So, if there is a scenario where For example, a person is violating the lockdown or the curfew. Now that person is also committing offenses, like in the case of C Muniappan, wherein that person actually committed something which led to death of 3 girls. So now that offense is not only lockdown violation.
वो डेथ चलेगा, नो नो नो, वो अलग से चलेगा, उसके ऊपर कोई प्रोहिबिशन नहीं है, बिकॉज ट्रायल ऑफ ऑफेंसेस कैन बी सेपरेट ऑल्सो.
ओके ओके ओके.
सी मुनियप्पन के केस में सिर्फ 188 पे क्वॉश किया गया था, मर्डर केस पे कोई इफेक्ट नहीं हुआ था उसका.
ओके मैम.
188 में मैक्सिमम पनिशमेंट क्या है आपका, 6 मंथ्स है. बेसिकली 188 में अगर आपका केस चलता भी है, चाहे कंप्लेंट केस है चाहे पुलिस केस है, तो वो समरी ट्रायल से चलेगा. ठीक है, तो उन्होंने बोला कि 188 को हटा दिए, लेकिन बाकी चार्जेस नहीं हटेंगे. सी मुनियप्पन में बाकी चार्जेस नहीं हटे थे.